Perla has recently launched micro investing. This video will explain everything about how it works. Thanks to Sora for the video idea. Let's jump into it. So back in late January this year, one of the co-founders of the company, Hayden Smith, announced a few changes for the first quarter of this year. Once we scroll down and have a look, we can see you've got a bunch of things coming up: lower chest prices, invest micro amounts is there as well, and then of course investing your spare change that you round up. So for those of you guys who don't know what micro investing is, it is basically investing really small amounts, really micro amounts, as the name suggests, oftentimes as small as $5. And the reason why this is a big deal is because traditionally brokers will not execute a trade unless the initial trade is at least $500, right? So if someone is new to investing, it's going to be very tough for them to actually save up that initial $500 if someone is in their late teens or early 20s. But micro investing basically gives people almost an equal chance to invest in these types of products. Now, just keep in mind that although this is trying to bridge that gap between the people that can invest and the people that can't really invest high amounts, this feature isn't actually new in Australia. What Perla is doing isn't really new. It's been done before for many, many years by companies like Spaceship, CommSec Pocket, and Raise to be the most popular ones. We'll discuss these competitors later on as well. So logging onto the Perla website, you guys can see that at the moment for micro investing, they're offering 8 funds, and these funds have been deliberately and meticulously chosen to be, these specific funds. And the reason being is because these 8 funds are the ones that the Perla community is investing in the most. So for Perla, it probably makes sense to include these 8 funds in a form of micro investing as well, as opposed to their normal investing experience. So looking into these funds in much more detail, we've got the ESG funds, which are ethical focused. So ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance, I believe. So you've got ESGI and GRNV. Then you have the all-in-one ETF, which is VDHG. This ETF is talked about so many times in a lot of personal finance books, in a lot of forums and stuff like that. It's a very popular ETF. Obviously not a recommendation. So looking at the core ETFs, you've got VAS, which is probably one of the most popular ETFs for Vanguard. This tracks the ASX 300 index. Then you have VGS, which is basically an international ETF, which excludes Australia. And then lastly, you've got IVV, which is an American buffet, which tracks the S&P 500. Moving on to the last 2 ETFs, you've got ACDC, which is the battery tech ETF from ETF Securities. This ETF tracks lithium batteries and the technologies and industries that surround batteries in general. Then you have IMPQ from eInvest. This ETF is an active managed ETF, which tries to beat the Aussie Small Caps Index. Now look, if you guys are new to all this, which I assume that you probably are if you're watching a video about micro investing, you're going to look at this list and you're going to think to yourself, what the hell? There's so many options out here. Which one do you pick? Which one do you invest in? And which one is the best for you? Now look, I can't tell you what to buy because quite frankly, I don't want to get arrested. So don't ask me that question in the comments. But to help you guys out, I've made a video about every single one of these ETFs on my channel. Those videos are not a recommendation, but they're an in-depth look into the exact ETFs themselves, what fees they charge, what companies that they're tracking, what sectors and countries that those ETFs invest in, all that information. Obviously, you can use that information as part of your overall research for educational purposes only. I'll leave a link in the description to those videos. So what is Perla charging to access micro investing? Let's jump into it. If you're only trying to invest in one of those funds that we had a look at, the fees are going to be $1.70 per month. No fees while your balance is less than $100. And if you're trying to invest in 2 or more funds, then the fees are going to be $2.30 per month. And of course, once again, no fees for balances under $100. And you have, no fees for opening an account, to deposit and withdraw money, to invest or sell, or to transfer between funds. There's no Perla fees for that. And once we have a look at it in much more detail, you guys can see that the fees per month for a $5,000 balance is going to be 0.41% per year for that one ETF. If you choose multiple ETFs, the fees jump up to 0.55%. And of course, as your balances increase, so if you go up to a balance of $50,000, which is, if you get to that point, congratulations, it's pretty good. The fees are going to be quite low at 0.04% and 0.05%, pretty much like next to nothing. Now, looking at the other 2 examples in this table, we've got the other competitors, which we briefly spoke about. We've got Spaceship and Raise. You can see the fees are $250 flat for Spaceship for balances of $100 and above. And then for Raise, the fees are $450 per month, and the fees go up as you invest more, and so on and so on. You can see the funds are 3 fund choices for Spaceship and then 17 choices for Raise. Now, let's talk about this. It's very important to keep in mind that Spaceship is not the same as Raise or Perla, right? Although it's a micro investing platform, you can invest very small amounts. What Spaceship is basically a managed fund. They have dedicated people, dedicated fund managers and teams that are out there that basically spend, all their working days trying to research companies, trying to find companies that are going to outperform the market. And the good thing that I like about Spaceship is the fact that they actually publish their research online. So you can actually find out why they decided to invest in a single company, why they decided to sell a company and, remove the company from their portfolio. So that transparency is pretty good. So basically they're a more actively managed place. They're trying to actively research stocks. Whereas Raise and Perla, they're more ETF focused. Spaceship recently changed their fees recently, which was quite interesting. It got a lot of backlash from the community, a lot of posts on Oz Finance on Reddit, and people were complaining that Spaceship basically increased their fees. And because they usually did not charge a single dollar for the investor if you invested less than $5,000, but that was changed to a $2.50 flat fee per month as long as you invested over $100. So most investors were impacted. Most investors did have to pay a fee, and a lot of people were hating on Spaceship. But I will say that I made a video about this as well, about the fee changes. And if you look at this overall and you think to yourself that paying, even for Perla, 0.41% and 0.55% per year is too high, I would highly recommend you check out that video because it does make some really important points that you have to consider that are not just cost focused, that you need to take into account when looking to invest in things like this. It is not all about the cost, it's also about the performance and other factors as well. Now in that list, they haven't included CommSec Pocket, which is worth mentioning. It's a CBA offering where you can invest in selected ETFs with just $2 per trade or 0.2% per trade, whichever is higher. The investment options with CommSec Pocket are these 7 ETFs as you guys can see. Now, it's also worth mentioning that I made a separate video comparing Spaceship, CommSec Pocket and Raise all together. Now that video is a bit outdated in terms of fees, but there's some other information out there in the video which I think will be quite interesting if you're looking to decide between those 3 platforms. I'll leave a link in the description once again. So let's go through the sign up process together for Perla Micro. So once you log into Perla, what you want to do is you want to click on the investment tab and then go to Micro at the bottom, right? Once you're there, you can see there's a bunch of ETFs here as we had a look at previously. Now just for example's sake, not for recommendation's sake, I'm going to click on IVV, the S&P 500. I'm just going to add it to my portfolio like this. So once you click on that, you'll get a pop-up saying that your micro account isn't active yet. So of course, click on Set Up Micro. So once you're on the screen, make sure that you confirm all your personal information and make sure that it's up to date. Then put in a referral code if you've got one. Then click confirm down the bottom right. And then you should be able to build your portfolio based on this screen. You can basically select which ETF you want and then press continue. Now, the good thing about this is that you can always change your mind. So if I now want to invest in a mixture of IVV and VAS, I can just go back to the previous screen and select VAS, and the fund will invest in those 2 ETFs equally. And then what you guys can do is set up Autoinvest if you want to. So go on to the Autoinvest section, then click on the Micro tab and click on Set Up Micro. So you've got a couple of options here, starting off with recurring deposits. If you want to set up a specific deposit, you can choose the amount with the first deposit on X date, and then choose the frequency. So it can be every 1 week, every fortnight, every month. You can basically customize this to your liking. You can basically sync it up with your pay periods if you want to, which might be easier. The next option is rounding up your spare change and investing the money. So once again, click on this and click on setup. Now at this point, it's going to prompt you guys to enter in your internet banking details into this platform, and it's going to go through a third-party service called Basic or Basic. It's an Aussie company that basically looks at your financial transactions and then it uses that data to round up your transactions. It is secure, but of course, make sure that you read their terms and conditions to be fully sure and remove any doubts. Now, what you can also do is instead of setting up Autoinvest and doing all that hassle, what you can do is literally just click on any one of these ETFs. So if I want to just buy IVV, I can just click on here and literally just buy $5 worth of IVV, and you can see that it's completely free for that micro transaction. The total is going to be $5, and I'll be buying 5.04 units of this ETF very, very simply. Obviously, this is for example's sake only for the people that are new. This is not financial advice. I have to keep saying this. Do not copy me. Do not do any of this. Make sure you understand what you're buying. Now, it's very important to note that Perla Micro is not just sponsored because you are buying and selling very small amounts of the actual ETF. However, the overall Pearler experience, the actual brokerage experience for Pearler is fully CHESS sponsored. Just keep that in mind. CHESS basically means that you have full and direct ownership of your shares if in case the broker goes bust. If a broker is not CHESS sponsored, it basically means that they're holding onto the shares on your behalf. You still have ownership of the shares, but the broker is holding those shares on your behalf, and that's really the only big difference in my opinion. Now, it's quite unlikely, but brokers in the past have gone bust in the last 10 or 15 years, and people to this day are still waiting on their money, so it's quite unfortunate. But the shares in ETFs that were CHESS sponsored, the people were able to get their money back pretty much instantly. All they had to do was transfer their ETFs from one HIN to another, basically from one broker to another, very simply. Keep in mind though that with Pearler Micro, you are going to be investing very small amounts anyway, so personally I wouldn't worry too much about it. If you enjoyed this video, check out my other video on the full platform review of Pearler right here. This goes through basically everything that Pearler has to offer. And this video talks about how to actually buy shares on Pearler as a beginner, so it's quite helpful if you're new. And guys, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. If you enjoyed this video, check out my other video on the Pearler full